2 to go up by 1 over the Giants. Yeesh.
All right, I can hear that. You can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Brought to you by
We're playing the theme
Revitalize.
song, so we're just going to go with it. We're going to act like we know what we're doing, and we're going to act like this is, being broadcast perfectly to the world. Hey, hi, everybody. My name's Tyler Haig. Welcome to the Purple Territory Radio pregame show. I am joined by Mr. Giotto Troia, who happens to be a Packers fan. I just got to get it out real quick onto the into the internet, into the world. How's it feel, man? I mean, the Packers, come on. That was an interesting performance today.
Well, so I have a lot to say about it, but I'm going to be honest. I didn't watch this game. I was so disappointed with the way that the entire season unfolded. I decided to just run errands today. I was at a liquor store. They had a TV on, and I popped my head around to watch it for like a quick second. And that was when Matt Prater threw a touchdown pass. So,
Just magical.
Yeah, exactly. About as insulting as it can get when a kicker, one of the greatest kickers of all time, shreds your defense with a 30-yard touchdown pass as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but at that point he had thrown for more touchdowns than Aaron Rodgers had, or Aaron Rodgers was out for most of the game, right? So yeah, he definitely threw for more touchdowns.
Matt Prater threw for more touchdowns than the entire Packers team.
Wow, real
had the entire day, like not even or passing everything. So yeah, it was a great game. Really showed up and ended the season on a high note.
Definitely.
At least we had draft position potentially, so that's good.
Yes. Okay, so that's a great transition. Speaking of draft position, I floated out the idea on Twitter that it would be okay for Vikings fans to be okay with a win and a berth into the playoffs, and also okay with the idea of not winning and not making the playoffs because of the better draft position. Now, let me frame it this way. If the Vikings lose in the wild card round, is that better or worse than not making it into the playoffs, and why?
Well, I don't think so. So here's one way to look at it. The Vikings with Kirk Cousins this year, a little bit of a disappointment. Obviously, they're on a path, sort of control your own destiny to get into the playoffs. That's great. It's all a team can ask for, right?
Yep.
But they're not one of those scary teams right now. Those scary teams are like in the NFC, it's Seattle. I think they're the scariest team. Obviously, you've got to go on the road to the Saints for the entire playoffs too. But as far as teams that are getting hot at the right time, I really don't think it's the Vikings. This could be their third win in a row, but who have you played lately? The Dolphins and what was it, the Bills maybe or something like that?
No, not the Bills, but Detroit. So yes, I mean, and that is exactly my point. Is there seems to be so much enthusiasm and so much rah, let's go get them Vikings. But it doesn't feel like this team is the kind of team that can make a run in the playoffs. Now, I say that as a Vikings fan. I am rooting for them. I do want them to win. I would love to see an improbable run to the Super Bowl. All I'm saying is it doesn't look like they are built for that this season. Am I crazy? I'm not losing it, am I?
No, you're totally right. I don't think they're built for it.
That's what I'm saying.
Kirk Cousins isn't one of those guys that's going to win you a lot of games in the playoffs. He's just not. Like, that's why I was confused by the change to get Kirk Cousins. And I've talked about it before on these shows, and it's just, it boggles my mind why they spent so much money on a guy that doesn't have a playoff track record that's, anything to shake a stick at.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with that. You're right. But if from the move to upgrade from Cousins, I think is a practical move because you're basically just getting getting Keenum, only the better version. Did I say Cousins the first time too?
You did, yeah.
Yeah, I did. Okay, I meant Keenum. But you're basically upgrading Case Keenum into Kirk Cousins. The thing that bothers me about the transaction or about the acquisition, maybe is a better way to say that, is that fans are like, sweet, now he's going to throw for 500 yards and win probably 2 games all on his own. He's never going to do that. He was never that guy. He's never going to be that guy. So to assume that he was just all of a sudden, now he makes almost $100 million a year, so he's going to definitely be the best in the NFL. No, he wasn't. That was never going to be the plan. I digress. back to the playoff scenario, back to the playoff setting here. Is there a team that the Vikings that you maybe would think they could get a win in the first round? Against a Chicago, against a Dallas, perhaps, against a Seattle, or they probably wouldn't be playing Seattle, but you get my drift. Is there a team you think they could beat? Because I don't think they can beat New Orleans. I have a tough time seeing them beat LA, although they have not been playing as well as of late. Let's say they win, the Vikings get in. What do you think their chances of actually doing something in there? What do you think their chances are?
I don't think they're high. Like you said, I mean, they're not going to beat Seattle. If they beat the Bears today, great. The Bears might be resting people. You don't really know. I haven't really seen their final lineup yet. It doesn't seem to me like they should be resting because they're looking for basically a first-round bye with a win today. Mm-hmm. But if they play the Cowboys, they could get a win out of it. But I don't see them beating a Rams or a Saints or a Seahawks or a Cowboys. Or rather, they might beat the Cowboys, but I don't see them beating anybody else. It looks like the Cowboys just won, so they're making it in the playoffs with 10-6 record. But I don't see them going anywhere in the playoffs. So going back to your original question of would you prefer a win today and go into the playoffs or a loss and improve your draft stock? If I was a Vikings fan, I'd probably be rooting for a loss because otherwise you're just reducing your chances of getting a top-tier player.
Mm-hmm. The main argument I've heard against that, because I kind of feel the same way, and it's not that I don't want them to win, I just feel like long-term it's more practical for them to be eliminated from the playoffs today instead of next week. Does that, I don't think it's that crazy to assume that is beneficial, but there are a lot of people who would argue that those two spots in the draft aren't that big of a deal, and it's better to be a perennial playoff team. Like, how much stock do you put in that kind of an angle where it's they're in the playoffs every year? Does that matter in this league when the goal is to win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean it's success draws free agents, and they're willing to take a little less money for a little bit more success. That's a good point. Free agent is a good point. I mean, yeah, there's that, which is great. I mean, that's what the Packers were for how long? I mean, a decade maybe. Mm-hmm. But they were never able to do anything with it aside from 2010 and 1998. It was literally 12 years, and then it's been 8 years since. It's frustrating from a fan perspective to be that successful without really being able to reload and draw in enough young talent on young contracts or on rookie deals in order to really draw success out of those rookies early on.
Yes.
I mean, that's what the Seahawks were able to do with Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. Bring him in 2 straight Super Bowls. Not wins, 1 win, but I mean, there's a lot to be said about both points of view. Personally, I don't think that, and this is just coming from a fan of football perspective, not a hatred for the Vikings or anything. I just don't think that they have the talent and the depth and the consistency to go deep into the playoffs. And I hate to say it, but it might be smarter to cut your losses and just say, you know what, the Bears are supposed to beat us. Let's just let them have it, and you've already got too good of a record to really reload well in the draft, but it's something where
I hear you. And
should you risk Kirk Cousins maybe getting injured in a playoff game?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. And it's not that you want, as a Vikings fan, it's not that I want them to lose. It's not that I want them to be like, whatever, we don't need this. But it's the idea that, that acknowledging that a loss here isn't the end of the world. And it's man, Twitter just jumped down my throat about it. We're get off of the band. We don't like you. I almost got my Minnesota resident one of us card revoked today because I had the audacity to think that a better draft pick might benefit this football team than a wild card exit. It's outrageous to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams in the NFL that are just so scary, talented, and good right now that if you're one of those mediocre teams, I really don't think you have a chance. You might have a crazy miracle run like the Giants did in 2011 or something where they went in as a wild card and come out Super Bowl champs. But
yes,
it's nuts.
Well, and that seems to be the argument too. Is it's like, well, I don't know. The Ravens did it in 2012, and the Giants. It's like those were like historic, outrageous, like that doesn't happen all the time. And what normally happens is these teams back into the playoffs and then lose their first game to the teams that go on and play better. I don't know. This is kind of a depressing like pregame show. Now that we've been talking about this for like 10 minutes, so I guess let's spin it. So we don't lose everybody that's listening as a Vikings fan. Let's spin it and let's get positive. What would you want to see from the Vikings today that could give you, how do I want to say this, the most momentum? What type of performance would make you feel the best going into the playoffs should they win and make it? Like what kind of a performance do they need?
Yeah, it all comes down to the O-line and D-line playing well. I mean, the defense has been rock star-ish, sort of how they were supposed to be, at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And so you always have to look for that. Defense wins championships. If you can stop the other team from scoring points and your offense can score points, then you can win games. I think that they need a running game, which means the O-line needs to do stuff too. And Dalvin Cook's been looking like his old self as well. So, yeah, I think it comes down to line play and running backs because, you have a good quarterback and, you have great wide receivers and you're never really, searching for, hey, where did they go? They didn't show up this game on that part of the ball. But sometimes you're looking for the running game and sometimes you're like, where's the O-line? And other games you're asking where the defense is. So in order to go anywhere in the playoffs, they need line play and they need running backs to show up.
For sure. I completely agree. And it looks, like from a fan perspective, it looks like the defense is kind of lining up and playing the way they're supposed to, like you said. Like they're kind of, that is looking normal. The issue that I'm seeing, and maybe this is part of the reason I'm so down on it, is there's no real identity. We're 16 weeks into this thing, 17 weeks into this thing, and we're trying to figure out what kind of an offense we're going to see literally on a week-to-week basis from the Vikings. I think you nailed it. I think it all starts with the offensive line. I think when they play better, it makes everything else easier. But I've been saying this for weeks. There are so many things that the Vikings can do from a play-calling perspective that can help the offensive line. That offensive line isn't good. It hasn't been good all year. We knew going into the year that it was not going to be good. But there are plays that you can run and snap counts and things like that to help alleviate some of that pressure on the offensive line. Sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't. Stefanski has been better than DiFilippo had been, but those issues all come down to, like you said, how does the offensive line look? Can they run the football? Are they able to protect Kirk Cousins? Because when they turn one-dimensional, then it's easy. Then the defense doesn't have to worry about anything, and they just destroy Kirk Cousins. He's going to fumble. They're going to be down by 21. They're going to lose the game. Okay, maybe I went too far. Maybe that was a little bit. But you get my point, is that when they turn one-dimensional, things get ugly. And we have seen from Kevin Stefanski a little bit of a better, obviously balance has kind of been the hot term, the key phrase. But there has been a threat of a run, which then has made it easier to play action and made it easier for the O-line to protect. So I do agree with you. Would you like to give a prediction, a score prediction of any kind? How do you see this game going?
I think that the Bears D-line is going to dominate the Vikings O-line. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not going to be like 31-0 like the Lions-Packers today, but I think it's going to be probably like 28-14. It's going to be a two-score game probably. I think the Bears are going to win. They just have a more – I don't know. They've got just such a dominant defense. I don't know if that O-line can really hold up on the Viking side of the ball.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine after seeing what we've seen from that group, from Chicago's front group. It's hard to imagine a game. Imagine a scenario where the Vikings are successful against that group and can impose their will against their will.
What the Bears' defense is. Because they've shown up all year long. You don't know what the Vikings' offense is.
100%.
And especially 2 games in under the the new OC.
Yep.
I mean, new blood is always good for especially this late in the year, because teams thought they had you figured out, and then DiFilippo's gone. There's a new guy. All right, let's figure out his.
We got no tape
stuff
on him. So
maybe it's maybe those 2 wins are basically just saying, oh well, we don't have any idea, and it's two teams that were out of the playoff hunt, and so they just didn't even try.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bears have a better defensive coordinator, better defensive scheme, and better players' minds as well, mental makeup on that defensive line, in order to be able to maybe overcome some strategies that, whether they've seen them or not, they just know that they're better than the other team.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's probably what we're going to see today, is just a defense that either finally figured out the Vikings offense, or they're just that much better.
Yeah. Do you think there's any chance that Chicago recognizes that a game is out of hand, a certain San Francisco-LA game, and they maybe pull some guys? Do you think that winds up playing a part in this game at all, or do you think Chicago is just all in trying to stomp the Vikings out?
Every player is a little bit different. Some players are saying, you can rest me, fine, start me, but then pull me at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
Other players just want to play, and they stay in a groove, and they get in a groove, and they don't want to be pulled from that groove, even though the playoffs are on the line and all that stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if some people get pulled. They might pull the quarterback. Trubisky might go to the bench and just sort of bring in Chase Daniels, see if he can, in case something does happen to Trubisky, if Chase Daniels can get into a groove, whatever that might be.
Some type of groove. I'm with you.
Yeah, I doubt they're going to pull like DBs or anything like that. I really think that they're going to keep as many playmakers on the field as possible, because if they lose, then they don't have a first round bye. If they win, they do have a first round bye. So obviously they're playing for that first round bye. They want to win. They don't want to make it a close game. But you're right. If it does get out of hand, there's certain players that I think are going to be not expendable, but pulled from the field of play, just to, ensure their safety and get backups in groove.
Yeah, and we're also talking about Matt Nagy is the guy who sat all of his starters the entire preseason, so he's not like completely foreign to the idea of like sitting the important guys and letting them chill. Not that it's like a huge issue, but it would not shock me if the Vikings came out swinging, went up a couple touchdowns early, and Chicago kind of gave it to them and let them have it, because they realized we're not getting our bye. We'll take this second half as kind of our bye, and we'll try and beat the Vikings next week. So honestly, I don't think the Vikings will deserve to win. I don't think they're going to play well enough to, again, deserve a win, but I feel like Chicago's just going to recognize that there's no real reason, and they're going to let the Vikings have it. And that's the worst case scenario, because then what are we doing all week this coming week? It's talking about how we still don't really know what the Vikings offense is doing. All of Chicago's good players were out. What are we going to see from them this week?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the Vikings are going to win, but I feel like it's going to be a bittersweet victory. I'm going to go like 24-10, because I feel like they're going to get up a score or two early. But honestly, this is maybe like the most unsure of any game I've ever been. I could see the Vikings getting beat by 30. I could see the Vikings winning by a touchdown. I could see the Vikings winning by 2 scores because they come out swinging early. Like, I have no idea really what to expect from this game.
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen. It's week 17. There's players that, one team is on the verge of a playoff, other team is in the playoffs. So, yeah, you don't know what the mentality is of each team or each individual player, whereas in week 10, everybody's sort of fighting for a spot. So
exactly.
You don't know in week 17, whereas you do know that everybody's working hard in week 10. So, it's one of those weird weeks and a weird situation for sure.
Definitely. Well, hey, buddy, thank you so much for joining me for that. That felt a little bit like therapy, if I'm being honest. That was like, I feel like I got a lot of weight off of my chest there. So thank you for being a part of this with me. And I'm very, as sorry as a Vikings fan can be about how the Packers season has gone for you this year. Oh, shoot, I'm lying. I'm not sorry at all.
Even if the Vikings do make the playoffs, I am rooting for them for two reasons. One, the Packers once got into the playoffs and won the Super Bowl as a wild card. So it's exciting. When your team is not in the playoffs and you see a team come into the playoffs as like an underdog, huge underdog, and they end up winning it all, that's exciting. Mm-hmm. Plus, then you can you Vikings fans can wear something other than a white T-shirt for your Super Bowl championship shirts. So that's exciting.
Just gotta get it in. Thanks, killer, bud. All right, well, appreciate you joining. Appreciate you joining me, and I will. I'll see you probably not next week because we got like maybe no games. I don't even know, man. The playoffs, everything's up in the air. But thank you, Gio, for hanging out with me for this stretch.
Yeah, we'll see you, Tyler.
Later, bub.
Bye.
Skol Vikes.